On self-improvement with empowering themes. And I'm your host, Aalia. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of your favorite social good talk show, where today I have the immense pleasure of speaking with a true master of his craft, a visionary who has been shaking up the entertainment industry for over 2 decades. From producing Emmy-nominated films to co-producing Academy Award-winning movies, he's worked with some of the biggest names in the world. But what sets him apart from others is not just his immense talent, but his incredible mindset. He's a true believer in the power of emotional intelligence, in using empathy and self-awareness to make meaningful and lasting connections with others. And that's what we'll be diving in today. How to cultivate a success mindset and develop emotional intelligence. How to deal with setbacks and failures and emerge stronger and more resilient. How to build a team that shares your values and your vision, and how to inspire them to be the best version of themselves. I promise you this conversation will be nothing short of inspiring, motivating, and enlightening. Get ready to take notes, to learn from a true master, and to leave feeling empowered to take on the world. So let's do it. Steve Longi is a veteran film and television producer with over 20 years of experience in the industry. He's credited with setting up and co-producing the Academy Award-winning film Hacksaw Ridge, and has produced numerous film and TV projects, including the Emmy Award-nominated movie Prayers for Bobby. With over 100 film, television, and theatrical projects under his belt, join us as we delve into Longi's impressive career and his projects that aim to make a positive impact. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Longi. Thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it. How are you?
Thank you. I appreciate you for taking the time to listen to what I have to say.
Oh my goodness. More people. As we had talked about before, we connected on LinkedIn. My husband's in film, you're in film. And, every so often, I just love what I see. I love that people put out more than just, hey, I'm a film producer, and that you really look to impact the world with your knowledge and experience. And, as a person who, also feels like that's something I'm doing, it is definitely an honor to have you. You have produced several successful films and worked with a range of talented actors. How do you stay motivated and maintain a success mindset in an industry that is notoriously changing?
I'm not really qualified to do anything else, so I have to stay motivated and focused on filmmaking. So, for me, there's just no other option. So that's kind of how I approach it. When I was 11 years old, I had a subscription to Variety. I mean, I knew, when I was really young that I wanted to make movies. And, I bugged my parents. I'm like, God, I got to get this Variety magazine or newspaper thing. It's just like everybody in Hollywood reads this. So I've got to have a subscription. So, they went and looked into it and found out you could get weekly Variety delivered in New Jersey, because I grew up in New Jersey, about as far away from
Shout out to New Jersey.
Hollywood. Shout out to New Jersey. But anyway, so I had this weekly subscription to Variety, and had no idea what it meant or even how to read it, because it was written like in a trade language back then. And
right.
But this was just something that I was in my blood. I think was just in my part of my soul, and and I don't think of doing anything else.
As producers, I definitely see it as a conduit role. You're bringing these pieces together, which, requires you to work with a lot of people, different personalities, and manage various relationships, right? How do you develop and maintain your emotional intelligence in what is really a very dynamic work environment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to keep people inspired through the process, because I think that's maybe the issue that creeps in, because it's long, hard hours, and it's pretty intensive, in terms of the work. So I'd say filmmaking is such a collaborative medium that you need to have your emotional intelligence, in the right zone for that. And I think I am a very empathic person, so that helps with me trying to understand maybe what other people are needing, during the course of the process. So I don't know, maybe it's I worked in the restaurant industry for many, many years, and that really trained me to feel comfortable around people. And that ultimately is what it is. It's making people feel comfortable. And sometimes, when you're poking fun at things, or if you don't take yourself too seriously, that will put people at ease.
Right.
And then they will connect with you, because the next thing is the connection. So it's really all about this collaboration and then this ultimate connection with people. So everything that I'm doing is moving towards connection, getting to know them, for example, when I get on the set of a film, like the first day, I learn every single person's name on the set, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I mean, there's no one who is not important enough, right? Where I'm not going to know their name. That impresses people. Like they're just not used to that, and it's a very simple thing, and it helps really connect people to you. They feel like you're paying attention. They feel like you're present. Right? Because these are all the things that help connection.
I agree with you. I think that, everyone wants to be seen and heard and feel like, even if you're the gaffer, you know that your part makes a difference, even if it seems minute. And, you walking onto a set and making people feel like, oh, at least I'm appreciated. He's taking the time to get to know me. It's a big deal. That's part of emotional intelligence, that perspective of, are you going in your mind and thinking, what if I was that person? And then you react accordingly in the way that my mom raised me with to treat people the way you want to be treated. Mm-hmm. So is that kind of like your mindset going into that?
I have been that person, right? So, I had to, I was responsible for my own success. So,
we all are.
Yeah. And it wasn't easy for me. Like I just didn't have tons of support.
Sure.
So yeah, I had to, like my first job on a movie set, somebody like spilled white paint on the street in downtown LA, and they're, and they looked at me and they were like, clean that up. And then they all went in to watch the movie be filmed, and I'm out there cleaning white paint up off blacktop. So anyway, so yeah, I think it's just my natural, the way I am naturally around people. I just, I care about people. I do think I am very empathetic, and I do think about how other people are feeling.
I want to take a step back into how you also are very involved in telling some amazing and compelling stories. Hacksaw Ridge being one of them, right? And you had previously published a book, The Birth of Hacksaw Ridge, which chronicles the early years of Desmond T. Doss. How do you apply your emotional intelligence when it comes to telling such a compelling story? Because clearly you've done it and it's been very successful. So how do you apply that in the development of these stories?
Well, I think the first thing is, who I am helped me identify the power of that story. Because there were other people that had come along and didn't maybe think there was anything too special about it necessarily. At least, something to make a movie out of, which I don't know how you could possibly think that, but, people passed on the project. This happens. And I think, people who are in the creative endeavors, this is something that you should just know, that it's, because I get when we, encounter rejection, we turn that inward. We think there's something wrong with us. And maybe there is, but, I haven't done everything perfectly in my life, But I think you want to look at that bigger picture, right? And really understand what's going on there.
Right.
In terms of how I approach that story, is the first thing is I connect to the spirit of that man. The idea of going into World War II, not wanting to bear arms, but wanting to serve his country, and then doing it as a medic. And the medics go to the front lines, and he wasn't carrying a weapon. He refused to touch a gun or bear arms, and then on the battlefield he was tending to American and Japanese wounded. Ultimately he wins the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is like, I think he's the only conscientious objector to win the Congressional Medal of Honor, because otherwise how else would you do it?
Right.
So it was such a unique story, and that's what that's why I connected to it, I think.
In veterans, look, I was raised by a Vietnam vet. The trauma that my stepdad, you couldn't light a match in our house because it smelled like napalm. You didn't wake him from a sleep on the couch because you might get your arm ripped off. If he was asleep, you wanted to call out for. So I'm saying that to say, like, there's so much representation for a whole community there. And I think that that's part of what you're doing when you do it. It's how it's relating to you, but then also how it's relating to the world in general.
Absolutely.
So Tom Cruise, remember when the audio came out that they were trying to film during the pandemic? Here he was, and then crew members were not behaving. I
remember.
And he had that audio. Now, here's the funny thing. When I heard that, I kind of laughed. I didn't actually judge him because I had also been listening, because The Card Counter was a film that got shut down during the pandemic for my husband, and with Oscar Isaac and Tiffany Haddish, and he was spending months arguing with the insurance and SAG and the unions and just everything, the insurance company. So I understood, But when we talk about emotional intelligence and just the stress, like what were your thoughts on that moment of like him just kind of becoming unglued? And I'm not attacking Tom Cruise by any means.
I would never.
I wouldn't. I actually, like I said, I understood it. But, you know, as a producer and understanding that a lot of money is on the line and that it's very hard to actually make films happen, especially at those magnitudes. What were your thoughts on how he handled it, or just, you know, what happened in that moment?
Well, I mean, I totally get it. I don't condone it, but I get it, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So, listen, that's going to happen. I mean, movie making is a really intense process. So, you know, people every once in a while in life, you know, you lose yourself.
Yeah. It's
a human trait. So, you know, it's to be expected from mere mortals, right? And I think he's immortal.
Right.
Amortal. I mean, I've actually never met Tom Cruise, but I certainly admire him, and boy, do I connect with his passion for filmmaking and making great films. But I think the thing that maybe people who don't work in Hollywood or who aren't maybe completely well versed in this world is, you lose sight that on a film you are employing about 200 to 300 people. These are not movie stars or people that have flashy lifestyles.
Right.
These are everyday working people, right? Who are really working hard. I mean, they're doing physical labor. You talk about the gaffers. I mean, those guys, they're the people whose name I remember first.
Right.
Because they're doing the hardest work at the point in time, you know, when it's either cold at night and I'm sitting there with, you know, 5 jackets on and they're running around in shorts and a t-shirt. My mouth is hanging open, you know, in awe at them.
Yeah.
But you know, but that's the thing. So I understand that he's speaking because he doesn't want the whole thing to be shut down.
Right.
I mean, he's concerned. He's got a huge responsibility to a lot of people who have to pay their rent and their bills. And that's not just some sort of ego play. That's, you're right. It's that there's a lot at stake. There's a lot of responsibility here.
Yeah.
And he's trying to make sure he's living up to all his responsibilities so all those people can get paid and continue working.
Yeah.
So there's a bigger thing going on there. And when you take these things out of context, you know, if anybody came into any of our lives with a movie camera, right, or whatever.
It was like one of my friends said, you just give me a camera and follow you for a day, and I can chop up whatever narrative I want to put out there, you know?
And I'm sure, you know, you can make it look any way you want. So... Yeah, when it comes to media, you know, I obviously know to take everything with a grain of salt. And I'm not a guy who's saying don't trust the media or whatever.
Sure.
Although you shouldn't. But so maybe I am that guy. But
qualify it for sure. Qualify it.
Look, you got to use your brain. But I learned early on. This is kind of a funny story. When I first got my start in the business, somebody had called our office from Palm Beach. We were making a movie about a tanker that washed ashore in Palm Beach, and it stayed there for months on this socialite's beach that she lived on. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't get rid of this huge oil tanker. It was just, you know,
probably a big eyesore. Yeah.
Complete eyesore. Right. And the reporter called from the Palm Beach paper. And my boss said, why don't you handle that one? And I was like, oh, you know, I was all feeling real Mr. Important. And the guy asked me, and he said, so where do you plan on filming this? And I'm like, oh, of course, Palm Beach. Well, I didn't know that, like, Palm Beach, they don't want anybody filming anything there. So the way he wrote the article, he slanted it in this negative, like, Hollywood producer thinks he's going to come in here and film on our beaches, you know? No. And he slammed me. And, you know, he's being super nice to me in the interview, and then he just thrashes me. And then I go to my boss. I'm like, hey, he thrashed me. My boss couldn't stop laughing. I mean... He knew you were... He'd been through it before, you know, and he's like, yeah, that's what you get.
Welcome to the club.
Exactly, yeah. So, you know, listen, people, that was one way I learned, you know, it's like when you're in the media, you know, all these stories have a point to them. There's a reason. There's a slant. There's an angle.
How do you keep your emotions in check and make decisions with a clear head? You know, as part of your success mindset, like, is there something that you go through? Do you count backwards from 10? You know, do you like?
I should.
I remember one time my therapist I went to, he said there's a tapping method when you start. You know, so like what do you employ when you get into those moments? Especially because, as you mentioned, you're dealing with a lot of egos on set, and of course you have your own natural ego, as you should. But
I do.
Yeah, when those moments come up, what do you employ? What is in your arsenal?
You know, one day I was in the office and I was responding. I got this email that like really pissed me off, and I was furiously responding to it.
Like my husband, when I can tell when he starts vigorously typing on the computer.
You know, I mean, I'm just, this thing just sent me off, and so and I'm all proud of myself. I finish and I give it to my assistant, and I said, all right, what do you think of this, right? Because I have the luxury of having an assistant I can run things by. So that's number one. That's like a version of counting to 10.
There you go,
like run it by somebody else, get their take on it.
An external point of view. Yeah.
And he said something to me that really stuck with me that I use to this day. He said, you know what? It's good, but take the emotion out of it. And I was like, take the emotion out of it. Very good. So that was really super helpful. And even though I had always been professional up to that point, now I started to look at my correspondence, when I was getting more emotional, which you can tend to get from time to time. And I was trying to figure out, okay, what's the emotional part of it, and what's the professional, straightforward facts part of it.
Right.
And that's how I look at my emails. So even if I'm really pissed off at somebody, and there are times that happens, the email, I try to go the opposite way with the email and the body of the email, and I try to make it more formal and more precise, and I try to lay out a logical flow. And I tell you, I can usually turn people around because I don't start to lose it, because what people do is when they argue, they lose focus and they start to bring everything in, including the kitchen sink, and then the argument becomes about something that has nothing to do with what you're even talking about.
Oh, I love that.
It gets very confusing.
Absolutely. You want to be able to stick to your mission and stay level-headed, and that's definitely one important way. I love that you say that.
I mean, the other thing is this. I've been through litigation, where I work for someone who is in litigation, because I've never had litigation against myself, thankfully.
Thankfully, yeah. It's not fun, trust me.
I think this is what.
Yeah.
So I have been in a courtroom where they take the email and they blow it up 20x, and they go, Mr. Longi, on April 16th, 10 years ago, did you say this?
Yes.
And you're like, I don't know. And you're being presented with your correspondence.
Oh, yeah.
The test is, okay, if they blow this email up 20x.
Oh, my gosh.
And it's on an exhibit in court, because there's a company that makes these exhibits. They're gigantic.
Yep.
Am I going to be able to answer that in a room full of people?
Exactly.
So that's kind of the test.
That is such valuable advice, because in a day where we text and we email and we just go off, we never think that this could become part of something down the line. And I may have to answer for what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. And as you mentioned, often how people, especially when it comes to communication, only 5% is words, right? The rest is tone, body language. So when you don't have that to defend, well, I meant it like this, but people will interpret it. And so it's like, if you can't stand behind on what you've said with like a sense of integrity and like, no, I stuck to this situation. I didn't get emotional. I didn't start calling them names. And, because that's even going back to the Tom Cruise. He didn't call people out their names. He was angry and he used expletives, but he didn't say like, you're an effing loser. You're this, that wasn't what he was doing. And that is emotionally intelligent. You're allowed to be upset. You're allowed to express yourself. But is it something that can hold up, like you said, in court? So that's such an amazing gem. Like, people really should operate like that. I think it'll save them a lot more embarrassment down the line, for sure.
I refuse to do business on text messaging.
Right.
For the reason that you just said. I have to have a record. And I always tell people, like, I consult with writers and they're afraid of getting their ideas stolen or whatever. And I just say, look, half the battle is the documentation. Just document every single thing you're doing. If it's on a text message, you get a new phone, the text messages don't transfer.
Right.
I just bought a new phone. All my text messages are gone.
Yeah,
Thank
exactly.
God I saved the other phone. I'm referring to it every 2 minutes.
With the recent acquisition of John G. Fuller's book, The Interrupted Journey, which tells the story of Betty and Barney Hill's experiences and extraterrestrials, how do you approach producing a story like that?
It's the first recorded alien abduction. It happened in 1963, and it was between an interracial couple. So my way into the story is the interracial couple element, and it being 1963. So here's a man who's just trying, he's just trying to live life, as best as he can. He married a white woman in 1963. He's an African-American gentleman. And, this creates, obviously, in that time period, it was a very tense kind of period of time,
Of course. I mean, in some states it was illegal.
It was exactly illegal. Right. I mean, the Civil Rights Act, I think, wasn't even until 60. Yeah, right. But that's kind of my way into the story, as opposed to it being about aliens, because I think, maybe some people believe in aliens, maybe some people don't. I think right now the relevance to the story is great because of the Chinese balloon and the unidentified objects and the Navy coming out with, admitting that they don't know what some of these objects are. It's very compelling. But it's also an advertisement, for my film. And I always think that films that have relevance tend to get made. Right. That's kind of what propels them into production. So that's how I'm thinking about the story. So I'm looking at, okay, what's the way into the story where everybody can appreciate it, right? So it's not the aliens. It's really more about this man's plight. Mm-hmm. You've got a guy, again, who's just trying to live life under the radar for the most part. Next thing you know, he's at the center of the world's attention because it came out under hypnosis. And so to me, that's the human element of the story, versus the alien element. And that's how I come into all my projects. I'm looking for what that thing is, what that connector is. So that's a connector, right? Because we all, I think we can all kind of relate to feeling maybe insecure about our life or whatever, just generally, kind of uneasy about things or uncomfortable about things, no matter what they might be.
Audience, go to his LinkedIn, if you get to connect with him and just support, and because you have so much to say that I think gives such value to other people, not only people in the film industry, but just people wanting to make a difference or, have an idea in their mind and they're trying to make it happen. What are some of the key traits that successful people like yourself possess, and how do they, because I know it doesn't all arrive overnight, it's like a cultivation over time. But what do you think are some of the key traits of a successful mindset?
Well, look, I'll just speak for myself. I've said this in other interviews, but I always think the greatest obstacle you're ever going to face in life is you, right? And this is my story. Okay, so that's why I think I talk about it. And this is why I get it, I think, because I grew up very insecure. And even like up until maybe, when I was like mid-career, and maybe still I'm a bit insecure about things, although it's gotten a little better. Okay, right. You definitely do evolve and you grow and you learn. I think the first thing is is understanding intellectually what's going on. So for me, it was understanding how I'm my biggest enemy. Right. And the way you sort of figure that out is you start paying attention to your inner voice. So the most important conversation you're going to have all day is the conversation you're having with yourself. And if you want to, improve in any measure, you really want to try to pay attention to what you're saying to yourself all day long. Because a lot of it is really not very positive, ultimately. It's really focused on what's going wrong as opposed to what's going right. And that's where being grateful comes in. And grateful is another piece of this, is another answer to your question. Like, What are the tools? What are the things that successful people do? So I'm also very grateful every day. Can sound cliche, maybe. You wake up, oh, I'm glad I'm alive. Yeah, okay. Maybe I don't exactly do that. But, I kind of do. But being grateful about my health, that's a big one, right? Not taking it for granted. Just really, really understanding that, you really are lucky, And I hear of other people and their, things that, and people don't share, generally don't share like their ailments and things. I've realized, but
I do. I'm one of those people.
Some people do. But, I do.
But
too.
I do know what you mean. It's like,
But you find out like what people are struggling with, and it's pretty amazing, right? Like like you find this out sometimes about actors or presidents, what they're going through. They have to. You look at the King's Speech, right? I think that was like such the greatest movie. This is like a king who stuttered,
right?
And he had to rally his country, to victory in World War II by giving these rousing speeches. But he's a stutterer, right? What a great premise for a film.
Of course.
But I think those are two things. Those are tools that I use. The awareness, that's a big one. The gratitude, that's a big one. And then the one I'll just give you real quick is just changing your story. So that dialogue you're having all day, changing what that dialogue is. And that means changing your story about who you are and how you feel about things. And also the story about you and how things go in your life.
Right.
Like when you say, oh gosh, every time I go to Vegas, I always lose. You know? And there's this great story about, again, real quick, David Cho, who's an artist, he's an American artist. He said, and he's a multimillionaire now, and he said, a big gambler. And he said, you know, I was going to Vegas for all these years, and every time I'd leave Vegas, I'd leave as a loser. And he said, so I decided, like, I'm tired of losing all my money. So he said, you know what? I'm going to go to Vegas. And even if I'm there for an hour, even if I'm there for 10 minutes, even if I'm there for 5 minutes, if I'm up, if I'm winning, I'm leaving. And every time I go to Vegas, I'm not going to wait till I'm a loser. I'm going to leave while I'm a winner. And he became a multimillionaire by just following that advice.
Oh, my goodness. That's incredible. The other day, I was driving in my car. And, you know, look, I talk a lot about trauma and surviving because I have experienced a lot. But I remember for a long time, I would, you know, I mean, even when I got diagnosed with cancer, I thought, of course I am, because I'm so unlucky. I just, you know, but the other day when I was driving, and like you said, it's just always, it's an ongoing journey with yourself and the conversations that you're having with yourself. And I realized, I said, you know, because I do engage hypnotherapy and I do, you know, and it's like, it was clicking with me that, you know what, I've been so lucky. Yes, I had these horrible things that happened, but they could have been worse. You know, I do wake up grateful every day because I fought to be here. I fought,
you've been
like for this life, right? In such a way, in that that I recognize I'm so lucky, and I've been lucky all along. So, you know, how you frame it, which is kind of going into the next question that I had, which was how do you handle rejection? You kind of touched on it earlier, but yeah, the failing forward idea, or, I mean, look, I think one thing people don't often do when they get rejected on something is ask for feedback, because sometimes it just needs tweaking. Maybe it, you know, but even then getting rejection does not mean that you're whatever it is that you have to offer does not bring value. You touched on it, but what lessons have you learned from those experiences of what a lot of people see as rejection, but for you, it seems like it's really just been the catalyst to the next step for you?
You know, with my philosophy, I subscribe to this philosophy called carefreeness, and basically carefreeness is about, you know, how you create your life. And I always say that, you know, your life is created by all the reactions you've had to everything that's happened to you. So ultimately, you're the one that's completely responsible for the life that you have right now. It's all your fault. You don't want to frame it that way, but right. You know, we attribute meaning to everything. Right. We give meaning to everything so we can understand it, right? So we can digest it. And so when we get rejected, we're attributing meaning to the rejection, which you shouldn't do, especially in the film business, because, you know, rejection's the norm for me. People are so surprised to hear this. I expect rejection. I love rejection, actually, because I believe so strongly in my projects. Like, everybody that passed on Hacksaw Ridge, you don't think I called them and said, you passed on Hacksaw Ridge? You know, right. I mean, I didn't do that, but, you know,
but you could have.
I could have, and I didn't. I was nice. But, you know, the idea that I am seeing something that maybe they're not seeing and that they're going to pass on it and I'm going to get it done, I am not attached to the result. Okay, so this is another major thing, right? So this is another thing people can really use. Be passionate about the process and indifferent with the outcome. Okay, so I'm totally passionate about my projects, totally passionate about my outreach, totally passionate about what's going on, but I'm not so connected. Yes, I'm paying attention to it, and yes, it is affecting me. I don't want to say that, but I'm really not pouring any more gasoline on those fires. I'm sort of putting them out, and I'm saying, nope. Okay, that's fine. They passed. I'm moving on. I'm trying to refocus back into the action, the positive action I'm taking to move it forward. Ask for feedback. So not everybody gives good feedback, but so sometimes you have to know how to listen to feedback, okay, how to interpret feedback. But yes, pay attention to what people are saying. If 10 people tell you the same thing, then you really want to pay attention to it. If one person tells you something, not so much. Right? Don't just be chasing different people's opinions, because everyone might have a different one. But if 10 people are sort of saying that same thing, you want to look at that. You know, as a writer, I say to writers, you know, this is how you handle notes. Okay, you're going to get a lot of notes. You get notes from studio executives. Like, I've been in situations where they give you 9 good notes and 1 really bad note. And I'll say to the writer director, I'll say, just implement the 9 and don't implement the 10th.
Right. By the way, I picked up on something that you did earlier because I do that as well. And I love that you did it because it's like you really are an empath. You said, when you were giving an explanation, you said you started off with, well, you have to. And then you kind of stepped back from that and you said we don't have to. It intrigued me because I do that from the perspective of, I feel that when people think you're trying to tell them what to do, they're almost less receptive. But when you recognize that people don't have to do anything unless they want to, but you want to encourage them. I mean, I felt like that was such an empath trait.
You're right.
Well, like what goes through your mind when you're like, okay, wait, hold on. Well,
You're absolutely right that it's something I picked up, that is born out of the whole philosophy of things because... Yeah, it's like you don't want to be telling people what to do. That is true. But I go a little deeper on it. I'm thinking, okay, but it's not just that. It's that in life there really aren't no rules. You're blazing your own trail. So it's not that you have to do really anything, right? Like you don't have, you have to obey the law, I guess. And you have to take care of your health. Yeah, there's certain things, right, that you probably have to do or should be doing
for sure.
But I want people to understand that outside of that, everything that we have experienced, everything that we think about, it's all been created by us. It's all made up. This is all an illusion. And that's really the core of what I'm doing. It's that, hey, in this big illusion, there is no have to do this or have to do that. There is no real rule. Okay, because all the rules are sort of man-made. That's why the Stoics and the Hindus and the Buddhists, I think that's why they were so wise. Because, back when, the world started, or at least when human beings start to communicate and write and share ideas, that was like the purest form of the world. But now we have media and culture and religion and education and mass media, so many things that are molding us
and
influencing us on how to think. So I don't want to be the preacher who's telling you have to be in this mold of what, and that's the deeper thing there.
Right. What advice do you have for the young, and I want to make, before I actually say this, like people in the audience know that, yes, we're talking a lot about film, but you can apply any of these principles to success mindset for any business or any organization that you're trying to run. It's not that this, take it more metaphorically as opposed to this is just for film and only for people in film. I mean, at the end of the day, success is success, and we're all trying to build something. And those principles remain the same across that spectrum and across the board. But for the young professionals looking to develop their mindset, and emotional intelligence for the betterment of their careers, what is the advice that you would give them?
There's a magnifying lens on everybody. Right? Like everybody feels like people are watching them because if you're on Facebook, people are watching you.
Yeah.
So get off Facebook. But but I feel like there's a lot of I talk to a lot of young people, interact with a lot of younger people, and my sense, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, and I don't want to generalize, but I feel like there's a lot of pressure, even more pressure than when I was younger, because it just seemed like you could grow up and do just about any job and you'd be respected and but I think in the world today we've sort of been conditioned to kind of think like you've got to be some sort of celebrity to have any sort of self-worth or something, right?
Right.
So this is being instilled. So what I would say to young people is go out, and this is what I did. Go out, if you have a dream or if there's something you want to do, go and start doing it with the people that are doing it at the highest level and do it for free. Forget this, you only work for money thing. Forget that. Now, I'm not saying that's not something that you should subscribe to, because it is.
Right.
Because you are worth something. Your work is worth something. However, what you're going to get in exchange in terms of knowledge, that is going to be worth at least as much as what you're giving. Right. So I would say go for the knowledge. Now, the best knowledge you're going to be able to get is when you watch somebody at a super high level fail every day. You're going to be like, oh my God, is that what the top looks like?
Yeah.
It's like this brutal? Like people think that I could, I'm at a point in my career. And again, there are people that are way higher than me, or people, and they just think like it's easy.
Right.
All of a sudden. And I'm not saying it's harder, but it's always hard. It's always challenging because it's just how life is.
Right.
I would say get out in the real world, get a reality check on how things really look, not how they look on social media, but how they look on the day to day, and that's going to change your mindset on how things are, and then that'll change how you react and act.
There's a formula to everything we talked earlier, and we've hit on it today so many times. Event plus response equals outcome, and I love that you even said work for free. Look, my husband, when people look at his IMDb now and they're so impressed, okay, but he worked actually when he finished law school. He went to now he's going to kick my butt if I say it wrong. Lionsgate. I think he was at Lionsgate or something. Anyways, he was stuck in the copyright infringement, and for a year, he tripped me out one time. He told me, he says, I worked for a year, 8 hours a day, no pay, just as an intern out of law school as an attorney, sending cease and desist letters. But now what he's doing and the connections and the value, just as you said, even with Unsugarcoated Media, we have an amazing team of interns that come from USC, and I'm like, look, guys, and one of the biggest things I tell them is if you can learn to not care what anyone else thinks about what you're doing, because in your heart you're doing what's right for you, that's a superpower. Right. That is a superpower 100%. So I love that you said that, and I totally agree with you. And I love your background. I love what you shared. It's incredible, and I hope that people will continue to support you and get connected to your projects. I know you have more coming out. Where can people stay connected and support you? Where would you like them to go?
Yeah, so I've been active on LinkedIn recently. That's been a great opportunity for me, and so that's how we met. It's fantastic, and so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I connect with everybody that reaches out. If you have questions, you can direct message me on LinkedIn. For people that want to submit screenplays and things like that, I use a service called Virtual Pitch Fest. So that's usually where I direct people for that. I have a website, www.longitudeentertainment.com. So I'm pretty easy to find. I'm on IMDb, and if you Google my name, there's plenty of articles and things over the years that I've done on all my films and stuff. So I'm really accessible. I try to be accessible. I run my business like 24/7. There really are no hours. And so, I do consulting for screenwriters, and I've got a really, really solid consulting business. And so a lot of my clients have become friends. I go visit them, and they call me after hours, and there really are no after hours. What am I saying? They call me all hours of the night and day and whatever, and I'm there to help them. So, that's just who I am as a person. I just like that connection. I love that.
Okay, I have 2 minutes to ask you a couple fun questions, rapid fire questions, but I'm going to ask you two. Okay. What is the weirdest thing in your fridge right now?
Probably the pina colada mix that's been in there since the summer. I don't know.
I think I've got some juice in there like that too. What is the worst fashion trend you've ever followed?
That I have ever followed? I'm a short guy, so wearing heels and boots and things like that, horrible.
That's funny.
I don't do it anymore.
What's the funniest joke you know by heart?
Oh, God.
The interns came in.
What's the rating on this show?
What's the no holds barred?
What's the funniest joke? God, and I'm sure there's a really good answer to that one, but right now I'm really blanking.
Okay, we're gonna have you on again when you release your next project. And,
God, what a good question.
We'll have you memorize one for next time.
I'm trying to think of one that relates to the film business. Oh, so this guy's at a dinner and he's talking to this agent, and the agent is telling him this story. It's a producer. So this producer's talking to this agent. The agent's telling this producer a story. And the producer's looking at the agent and he goes, Joe. And he's like, what? And he goes, I know you're lying. And Joe says, I know I'm lying, but just hear me out. That's probably not the funniest joke, but I thought it relates to the business.
Yes. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. I can't wait to see you again. I appreciate your time.
Same.
As we wrap up this incredible conversation, I am filled with such a sense of awe and inspiration, and I hope you are as well. Our guest today has shared with us so much wisdom and insight that I hope you've been taking notes. From the power of emotional intelligence to the importance of mindset, our guest has shown us what it takes to achieve greatness in any field. He has reminded us that setbacks and failures are just a natural part of the journey, and that true success comes from not avoiding them, but from learning from them and growing stronger. But what really stands out to me is his unwavering belief in the power of collaboration, of building a team of like-minded individuals who share your vision and values. Our guest has shown us that success is not a solitary pursuit, but a collective effort. It's about lifting each other up, sharing knowledge and resources, and cheering each other on. So let's take his words to heart. Let's remember that success is not just about what we achieve, but about who we become along the way. Let's cultivate our emotional intelligence, our mindset, and our sense of community. And let's be the kind of people who lift others up, who inspire and empower those around us. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and also don't forget to go to our website, www.unsugarcoatedmedia.com. Sign up for the newsletter so you can stay in the know about all that's happening with us. And once again, thank you so much for letting us be Unsugarcoated. We'll see you next time.